going to continue from where we stopped last week. We were talking about, we looked at what journalism is all about. We looked at the purpose of journalism, and we delved a lot into what journalism is all about. We say it is the journalism has to do with going into the field to source for news. When you go to the field, you assess it to see how you can apply what you have gotten for the field from the field to be able to do the needful to be able to do before you now distribute even to the people. So very look at what we call press freedom, and then also the constitutional provision for constitutional provision for the practice of journalism in Nigeria. So now let's understand what press freedom is all about. Press freedom. Now, when we talk about communication and expression through various media, I'll come again. We're talking about press freedom. It is the principle that communication and expression through various media, which includes the print, electronic media, and what have you, should be considered a right to be exercised freely. Should be considered as a right to be exercised freely. In other words, when we talk about press freedom, we're saying freedom from arbitrary interference from government or any agency. Freedom from interference from government or any agency. Press freedom, that's what we're looking at, press freedom. It is a principle that communication and expression through various medium or media, which include the print, the electronic media, and every other forms of media, should be considered a right to be exercised freely. That is, free from arbitrary interference from government or any other body. Free of interference from every other body. Now, what are we saying here? We're saying that the role of the press in any nation at all should be free from arbitrary interference from government. Now, let us note that Sweden was the first country in the world to adopt press freedom to their constitution. That is the freedom of the press, 1766. Sweden was the first country in the world to adopt press freedom to its constitution. That was in 1766. It's called Freedom of the Press 1766. But here in Nigeria, it has not yet been adopted into the constitution. It has not yet been adopted into the constitution. In the countries like America have adopted the freedom of the press into their own constitution. America has adopted the freedom of press into their own constitution. However, there's what we call in Nigeria. There's what we call fundamental objective and directive principles of the state policy. I'll come with that again. There's what we call the directive principle of the state policy, or let me say fundamental objectives and directive principle of the state policy. Now, what does directive principle of the state policy imply? As far as within the ambit of press freedom, it says that government is saying that it is the duty of the Nigerian press to monitor governance and make the public officers accountable to the people at all times. The directive principle of the state policy states that it is the duty of the Nigerian press to monitor governance and make public officers accountable to the people at all times. Now, in the Nigerian Constitution, there is no direct constitution that empowers the freedom of the press. There's no direct constitutional constitutional rule or law that guarantees the freedom of the press in specifics. What we have in Nigerian Constitution is the 1999 Constitution that 1999 Constitution that says that everybody has the right to express themselves. That is the freedom of expression and dissemination and to impart information. That's in section 39 of the 1999 Constitution. So that part of the Constitution gives right to every Nigerian citizen to express themselves. That is to disseminate information, to also impact information. In other words, you can go on the road and you can speak. You can write something for as long as whatever you write does not infringe on the right of anybody. Now, we are saying now that in other countries, the freedom of the press, and in other countries, the Constitution guarantees the freedom of the press. In US, in UK, and so many other countries outside of Nigeria, other climes. So the Constitution specifically empowered the press to operate. But here in Nigeria, it is not specifically written in the Constitution. So what we have is what I just said to us now. I said direct principle of the state policy. Now it is like a subsector, a subsection of the Constitution. And what does it guarantee? It guarantees that it is the duty of the Nigerian press to monitor governance and make public officers accountable at all times. So it is part of the functions of journalism to monitor governance. So it is now written in directive principle of the state policy that it is the responsibility of the press to monitor governance and make public officers accountable to the people at all times. Now let's move forward. Now, in view of this press freedom, we now have also what we call Freedom of Information Bill, FOI. Freedom of Information Bill or Freedom of Information Act of 2011. Now, this Freedom of Information Bill or Freedom of Information Act of 2011, now this bill was sponsored by so many civil societies. It was sponsored by so many citizens. Now, what is the essence of this? What's the essence of this bill? Now, the essence of this bill is to further give strength to the practice of journalism in a nation, in Nigeria as a nation, Now, let me list some of the bill, what the bill ensures. The bill ensures that one, there's free flow of information in government space in Nigeria. Number two, to protect public officers from giving out information in their possession. Or we can say to make public record and information freely available to public. I'll take that again. Freedom of Information Bill, amongst other things, ensures that there's free flow of information in government space. Or you can say that the bill ensures that public record and public information are freely available to the public or is made available for public interest. What we're saying here, let me explain it further, that there is a need for government to be open in what they do. For example, so many bodies are actually, so many organizations, so many international bodies are giving Nigeria money to fight COVID-19. Sweden has given unto us, WHO has given unto us, and so many other agencies. Now, it is the duty of you and I, the public, to be aware of this money. And that's why you see it in the press that, hey, Germany gave Nigerian government so number of money. World Health Organization gave, United Nations gave Nigeria so number of money. Now, and the public, the press has a duty to actually publish it without being arrested, without being harassed. So the Freedom of Information Bill, or the Freedom of Information Act, which came up in 2011, empowers that there's free flow of information, there's free flow of public record to, by government to the people. And then whoever has given such an information out, a public officer who gives that information out to the press to publish, should also be protected. So the Freedom of Information Bill, protects such public officer. So you can, as a journalist, you can go to your local government, you can go to any public institution and require for any record that you feel that the public should know. But the challenge we have is that many of the public officers, they don't want to disclose. If you go to a local government today and you meet the chairman and you tell them that you want to know how much they generate internally, there's what we call IGR, internal generated revenue, you discover that they will resist. But the truth is that according to the FOI Act or bill, they are supposed to make it open because they are collecting revenue on behalf of the people. So they must be accountable to the people. So that's where the journalist comes in. So I hope you understand the difference between the Freedom of Information Act 2011 and that of the 1999 Constitution, that subsection 39 that guarantees freedom of expression, dissemination, and impartation of information. The first one is a right of everybody, but the press are also hiding under this same constitutional right to discharge their duties. And so the journalist civil society group went further to push for what we call the Freedom of Information Act 2011. Now let's go further. So we have just talked about the press freedom, and then so like I said, there are no well-written, articulated constitution that guarantees press freedom in Nigeria except for this FOI Act or FOI bill. Now let's move on. We quickly look at what we call the categories of practice of journalism. Categories of the practice of journalism. Now there are 5 major categories of the practice of journalism. 5 major categories of the practice of journalism. You have what we call the print. You have what we call the print journalism. We all know that, which is newspaper, magazines, and everything in print that is published. And then we also have what we call broadcast journalism, photojournalism, online journalism, then public relations. Are we following? 5 categories of the practice of journalism. So we have what we call print journalism, you have what we call the broadcast journalism, you have photojournalism, online journalism, then you have public relation and ads, public relation and advertising. Those are the categories, and we have done that in mass media. Mass media, we'll talk about the various types of mass media. So you can be a print journalist, write for newspapers, write for you can also be a broadcast journalist where you have your TV, you have your radio. You can be a photojournalist. That's journalist that has to do with pictures that you see. You see journalists at event, they come with their cameras, and then you go to the newspaper, you see. Then you also have in broadcast journalism, they don't use the regular still camera. They use the moving camera to come and capture events. Then during their news report, you see them, they show the pictures. So we have what we call photojournalism, and then you have online journalism. So as a result of technology, we have online journalism. So most of the traditional media have also up online. So you can go online to any of their platforms. You have Punch online, Vanguard online, you have this day online and what have you. Then you have the public relation and advertising. So that is that. And then let's quickly move on to what I call, hold on. Yeah, the types of journalism expressions. Types of journalism expression, journalism expressions, journalism expressions, journalism expressions, and then we'll touch the principle of journalism. Types of journalism expression. Now, in journalism, you have people that find expression in what we call investigative journalism. Investigative journalism. Now, investigative journalism is the type of journalism where you, like from the word investigation, they investigate, they research. Just like you have your SSS, you have EFCC. EFCC do a lot of, you have police to SSS. The police do a lot of, you have detective. So investigative journalism is similar to what a detective will do. They go undercover to research, to find out, to be able to unearth, uncover certain crimes that are hidden to everybody. There are people who are involved in crime that you and I don't know. But by reason of intelligence, people, the police, EFCC, they get information and then they get a lead and then they go after it. So the same thing too in investigative journalism. So investigative journalism is a journalism that is very, very delicate. It's very, I mean, very expensive. Expensive in the sense that if you are going to be engaging in investigative journalism, then as a media organization, you are going to spend money because you do a lot of undercover, you do a lot of research, you have to travel to different places just because you want to get information, you want to find out the truth behind an incident, behind a particular thing. We have had cases of fraud in high places, case of fraud in government places, in case of fraud in so many organizations, and at the end of the day, investigative journalism is done. So investigative journalism is different from the regular news reporting. So the next expression, journalism expression, is news. So you have a journalist who goes to cover an assignment. So that is just news reporting. So news reporting. So it's on that type of journalism expression. So a reporter, a correspondent, as the name is called, either a reporter or a correspondent or what we call a bureau. A bureau is somebody who report news outside of his state, or they can also call them correspondents. So they call them maybe Abuja bureau. You call them Abuja bureau. You call them our Ekiti bureau, depending on wherever they are. It can be our London bureau. It can be our US bureau. Somebody that is covering outside of a station. So it's referred to as bureau. So you find expression as a news reporter. Then number 3 is what we call review. You can review stories, or you can be a journalist, but you focus a lot on reviews. 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 Now, when we talk about reviews, we're talking about opinion writing, opinion type of writing, where you review a product, you review a company, and then you write it in any of the newspapers, or it's something you can do on radio. So that's, so as a journalist, you can find expression. All you do is just you review. And then you have what we call a columnist. A columnist. A columnist. If you take a lot of newspapers, you see columnists who are, you see columnists who are writing. It's also similar, a little bit similar to a review, but it's not a review. It's also a kind of a specialized kind of writing. So as a trained journalist, you can specialize as a columnist. There are so many columnists that we have today who have become experts. For example, if you are an expert in the area of health, you can have you can have you can have you can have a column in newspaper, and all you write about is health. You can be maybe a marriage counselor and a marriage expert, and all you write about is marriage. So you become a columnist. Some, you can be a financial expert, and then you are giving a column. That's about columnist. So it's an individual write-up. I mean, a column that is owned by an individual, and he expresses himself in whatever way he or she wants to express himself in his own area of specialization. Then we have what we call features. 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 I'm talking ahead of. So there are journalists who focus on writing feature stories. Feature story is just what we call soft news, unlike the regular news. The regular news is referred to as what we call hard news. So there's what we call hard news and soft news. On Saturday, when you pick a newspaper on Saturday, you see so many features. So it is like an analysis of a particular event, analysis of a particular story. For example, maybe we remember the story about the chief of staff to the president, passed on, is it last week or thereabout, and then we began to, so many journalists began to find expression by writing what we call features. When you are writing a feature, you can choose an angle. It can be his lifestyle. It can be his style of governance. It can be about his family. But you write it in such a way that it is like a magazine style. So most of the time you see features a lot on weekend papers. It's not as though you don't see them in weekday papers, but on weekend you see them writing features. So it's a soft news where you write in a literary manner. It's what we also refer to as what we call delayed type of writing, delayed news reporting. If an event happens today, you can, and in the normal news writing, you write it today and it comes out tomorrow. So because real news writing is what is immediate, what we call immediacy. But when it comes to features, features can be delayed. So features is a delayed news that you write in the literary form, you research, you put all manner of idiomatic expressions, grammar, and everything is in place. So you express your own self in writing a feature story. So those are just in a nutshell some of the expressions of journalism. Now, let me quickly touch before we go to this other part. I remember I mentioned something about what happened in Ebonyi State, where the government of Ebonyi decided to ban two journalists. One was from Vanguard and the other one from the Sun. Now, I think I recollect that I was sharing that they were banned because of a particular story that they wrote. One has to do with Lassa fever. The other one has to do with the fact that the reporter wrote that a military invaded Ebonyi State and did not go down well with the government. So the governor decided to come out openly to say that he has banned them for life. Now, everybody who read that story, who heard what he said, felt that it is a slight on journalism. It's an infringement on press freedom. That why should he do that? Do you know that some days or a week after that, he came back to the public to come and apologize, and then said that it was not deliberate because he has realized that he has infringed upon the right of those journalists, because there are procedures. If a journalist writes what you don't like, you don't just come into public space and tell everybody that you have banned them from life. It's against the Freedom of Information Act, and then it's against the fundamental human right of freedom of expression as provided by the 1999 Constitution. So a lawyer came out and began to tell him that if what he has written is against the ethics of the profession, all they needed to do, or is against the Constitution, all they needed to do was to go to court and let the court decide, and not come out using your executive power. It shows that you are gagging what we call the gag the press, GAG. Gagging of the press simply means not allowing the press to operate freely. Gagging of the press means arbitrary interference of the activity of the press or of journalism, which is not supposed to be. So anybody who wants to ban the press from operating then should do it within the ambit of the law. You sue for libel or you sue for slander. So that quickly moves us to That quickly moves us to the principle of journalism. The principle of journalism. The principle of journalism. Now, what are the fundamental principles of journalism? Number one, we have so many of them, but we'll just quickly take 5 fundamental principles of journalism. 5 fundamental. Number one is truth and accuracy. Truth and accuracy. Okay, truth and accuracy. We have about 10 minutes more to end the session. Now we have number one is truth and accuracy. A journalist cannot always guarantee truth, but getting the fact right is the cardinal principle of journalism. I'll come again with that. Journalists cannot always guarantee truth, but getting the fact right is the cardinal principle of journalism. We should always strive for accuracy, give all the relevant facts we have, and ensure that we have been checked. So when we cannot really, we cannot get the real information, then we should say so. When we talk about principle of journalism, we're talking about the principle that guides the practice of journalism. There are pillars in which we operate. Journalism is not just a profession where you just come and just write the way you feel. No, there are principles. There are disciplines you must understand to practice journalism. So the first one is truth and accuracy. So for you to report any story at all, you must ensure that you publish truths and that your facts are accurate. Your facts are accurate. Remember that you are accountable to the public. You are accountable to the public. So in order to earn the trust of the public, in order to show that you are credible, then it is very important that truth and accuracy must be a principle followed by you as a journalist. Number two is what we call editorial independence. Editorial independence is very important. When we talk about independence, we are simply saying that in journalism practice, you must not be partisan. You must not be partisan. We know very well that there are some of them, the media organizations are owned. The media organizations are owned by individuals. So we have what we call ownership. We have government ownership, and then we have what we call private ownership. There are 3 types of ownership in media, at least 3, or there are still a few more, but the 3 key ownership in media is government, you have private ownership, and then you have religious or institutional ownership of the media. So, but the truth is that whether you are owned by the government or you are owned by a private organization, a private individual, or an institution, the truth is that you must, the principle of journalism requires that you are not partisan. You operate independently of even the owner. Yes, the truth is that they say he that dictates the piper. So he that I've forgotten where he that pays the piper dictates the tune. So in as much as you are being paid by the piper and he wants to have a form of influence, the truth is that the principle of the profession requires that we must be independent. That is, we are not partisan, we are not taking side. We report facts as they are. We report issues as they are. So it's very important. Number three is that we must provide. We must. Sorry, I think I'm mixing it up here. I'm mixing it up. Yeah, there must be what we call the sense of responsibility. We must practice responsible journalism. Responsible journalism. The third one is what we call objectivity. There must be objectivity. We have talked about truth and accuracy. We have talked about independence. We have talked about social responsibility. That's what we call responsible journalism. Where you report issues, and if those issues are very, very then you must be responsible enough to make sure that you don't report it in such a way that it will offend the sensibilities of of the public. For example, you want to report a story about children, and especially if they are minors. What you do is that you report it in a responsible manner, in such a way that you don't put their faces there. You don't put their face there because they are still minor, or somebody who experience who has been who is a victim of rape. Now, as a victim of rape, you don't expose the person's face to the public. You hide it. So that shows that you are responsible. So that's what we call that's what we call social. So that's what we call responsible journalism. And then I talked about the need for you to also be objective in your reporting. You must be objective in your reporting. When we talk about objectivity, we're saying that you don't put in yourself when you're writing a story. For example, your mother is involved in a case and you're the one to cover it. You don't write it because you don't write the story and be subjective. Subjective means that you are putting yourself into the story. You are putting yourself. You are not supposed to put yourself. You are not supposed to be emotional in your writing your story. No, you are supposed to be what? Objective. That is, you balance the report. You listen to A and you listen to B, and you make sure what you are getting is the truth. What you are getting is the fact. You are getting what we call accuracy. So you can see that there is a correlation, there is a meeting point between objectivity, truth, and accuracy. So you go out there to source for news stories that are truthful and are factual, or truthful and are accurate. Now, in going outside there to report your story, you must be objective. So if an issue concerns two or more persons, then you listen to A and you also listen to B, and then you present the facts. Subjectivity is when you put yourself into it, that this person was the first person that slapped Mr. A, or this person was the person that first was slapped Mr. B. No, that is not journalism. Journalism comes to place when you report the fact as they are. That is what we call objectivity. So there are still many more principles. I just want you to just do your own personal research. Remember, we have also talked about ownership. I talked about ownership. That ownership can be government. Ownership of the media can be private. Ownership of the media can also be institutional. Let me quickly round up with this assignment. I want us to take down this assignment. Now, why is the freedom of the press very, very important? Why is the freedom of the press very important in any democratic society? Why is the freedom of the press important? Why is the freedom of the press important? And then maybe I should leave you to just write one page about why the freedom of the press is very important in any society. Any society, not necessarily Nigeria. The freedom of the press in any society. So did you get that assignment? Why is freedom of the press very important in any society? When you are writing it, just give a little background, very little background of the history of freedom of the press, and then begin to write one page on why is the freedom of the press important in any society. So I think that is the most we can take today. That's the most we can take today. You can send your assignment. Please, when you are sending me your assignment, make sure you put your name, your center. Some people have sent me assignment and they don't put their name and their center there. The name, the center, and the class. Because I also have other class, other levels I am taking. So if you just send your name and your center, you don't put the class, I will not be able to differentiate. You will be giving me headache. So when you are sending your assignment, make sure you put your name, put your center, and your level, so that I know that this assignment is for 300 level. And then you send it to Mr. Padonu online class at gmail.com. Mr. Padonu online class at gmail.com. And if you have any issue, you have any question, you can chat me up and I will answer you. So please make sure you do further research. Don't just depend on all that I've said in this class. All I said in this class, make sure you do your own personal research. All right, please, it's very, very important. Let's take advantage of this. I know you have so many other courses that you are taking, but please take this very, very serious. So see you next class. Thank you very much.